Good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you for joining us for John Peterson's memorial service. Forgive us, we had some technical troubles, but everything is fine now. My name is Kenneth Clark, and we just heard a little bit from Andre Watts, one of John's favorites. Later on, we'll hear from Leontine Price, who was another one of John's favorites. We have some family members, colleagues, and friends who will be sharing with us today during the service. And just as a reminder, we do encourage you to use the chat feature in Zoom. Computer programs vary, but you should see the word chat at the bottom of your screen. Clicking on it should bring up a chat window, giving you the ability to add a message to everybody on the chat. Think of this as the sign-in book. Please feel free to add your name and any comments you wish. We are recording this. Is that correct? We are recording this. We'll send you an email next week explaining how to access the recording of the service and the chat. So we will begin. First up is Tracy Anderson, a cousin from Orlando. Tracy? Oh, would everyone please, if you are on the, please keep your microphone muted unless you are on the program. And when it's your turn to speak, I'll ask you to unmute. So please make sure your microphones are muted. Thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to be sure I could be heard. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tracy. I'm John's cousin. I've known John as long as I've known myself. He was a brother to me and I was a sister to him. All my childhood memories are wrapped up in John. The man that you knew was the boy and the young man that I grew up with. He was always conscientious. It was always fun to be at his house. My Uncle John and my Aunt Maggie and my mother and my father, and John and I were my nuclear family. So I've survived the five of them, so I guess I'll be next. But the things that I like for you to remember about John was his honesty, his integrity, and his ability to solve problems. He was never one to have a problem. He was always about solutions. He was always about helping whomever he could help and doing whatever he could do for them. I was kind of like his baby sister, so I'm the one that he watched over. I remember we went to the beach when I was about 4 years old and a big wave knocked us over. And I can remember him scrambling, trying to get me up, thinking I might drown. He's always been that way about me. Always protective, always caring. And going to his house and being with him and my aunt and my uncle was some of the most precious memories of my life. But the thing that was the most important to me about John was the fact that he was very, very caring about people and that he always wanted to make a good impression and be there to assist anybody, whomever that person might be, if they wanted to be assisted. He was kind, he was compassionate, and he was a bit of a jokester. He would play little tricks on me and I would play little tricks on him. And that's how we got along. It was always a joy to be around him. He was an interesting person. He collected all kinds of books with all types of literature. And if you asked him a question and he didn't know the answer, he'd research it and then come back and give you an answer. And a lot of times it would surprise you what he came up with. So sometimes we would, research things together. Recently, we were putting together a family tree of our family. He had a lot of things that he had pulled up, and I had pulled some things up too, because I also went to the archives there in Atlanta out on Jonesboro Road, and I turned him on to it too. And so we were beginning to get ready to do some things for our family. So please remember him as someone who made his mark in the world, because certainly he contributed a whole lot to whomever he interacted with. He was a good listener, but of course, he was a great talker as well. Compassion, integrity, these are the things I would love for you to remember about him. And I guess that's basically what I want to say about him.
Thank you, Tracy, very much. We appreciate your comments. We're sitting here nodding our heads and laughing at some of the things you said. Yes, he would research and give you the answer, a quite detailed answer, usually.
Oh yeah. Yeah, real detailed to the point that you like, okay, where did he get all the information from? Where is he going getting all this information? Because he was an information resource. I'm telling you. You asked him something, and he said he will give you an answer. Believe me, you were gonna get one. But he had a huge, huge good sense of humor. So please remember those things about him.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you so much. Next, we have Kim Williams, another cousin from Jacksonville. Kim, if you would unmute, please. Tracy, if you'd mute for us, and just everyone, just make sure your microphone is muted unless you're speaking. Thanks.
Hello to everyone. I am Kim Britton Williams, a cousin of John Lamont Peterson. We call him John Lamont. I am speaking today on behalf of my siblings, Larry Britton, Lavetta Britton, Daryl Britton, Robin Britton Simmons, and Anthony Britton. His mother, Mrs. Maggie Peterson, was our aunt. Of course, his dad, Mr. John Peterson, was our uncle because he was married to our aunt. Our mother, Maggie Gordon Britton, was given his mother's name. As children, Larry and Lavetta had a closer relationship with John Lamont because they were in the same age bracket. They have memories of visiting with him, playing with his toys, and riding his bicycle. Apparently, John Lamont was the only child in the family with a bicycle because everyone can remember asking him, John Lamont, can I ride your bicycle? When our grandmother, Willie Mae Gordon Blackshear, who was John Lamont's aunt, moved to St. Augustine, we did not get to see John Lamont as much, only at family funerals. We lost contact with him when we started down the path of forming our lives of adulthood. Many years passed without any contact between the cousins. When I was living in Concord, North Carolina, my sisters came up for a visit. We began to talk about our childhood memories and family members we have not seen in a long time. We Googled John Lamont's name, and after strolling through several search returns, we came across an email address, jpeterson@gsu.edu. Excitement was in the air. On August 30th, 2014 at 11:01 p.m., we sent him an email and provided our cell phone numbers. The next day, John Lamont called. We knew it was him because his voice was the same as we heard it last. With excitement in his voice, he said, hello, everyone. Yes, I am John Lamont Peterson, your cousin from Orlando, Florida. And he also said, and Kim, you are emailing my business email address. Send emails to petersonjl1@att.net. From that point on, we communicated and interacted with each other. The last communication we had with John Lamont was on May 20th this year at 11:05 a.m. when he sent an email sharing information on diversity in policing. We did not know why communication via phone calls or emails abruptly stopped. This was not normal. Lavetta called and I emailed him and there was no response. And not wanting to face reality, I allowed weeks to go by searching for an obituary for John Lamont Peterson in Atlanta, Georgia. July 20th, I performed the search, and at this time, we found out the reason why our communication was broken. I found a very well-written obituary by Dr. Roger Bakeman. We needed to speak with him desperately. I sent Dr. Bakeman an email, a friend request on Facebook, and a message via Messenger. Dr. Bakeman, my siblings and I thank you for responding to our request to contact me. We read the obituary several times. My siblings and I are proud to know that John Lamont consistently achieved optimal levels of performance and accomplishments for others and himself, especially in the field of health concerns that the social and political realms did not embrace. A person does not put so much time and effort into very methodical research so that interventions were put in place to solve problems and reduce risks if it wasn't in his heart to do so. My siblings and I are very proud that John Lamont is highly regarded and respected in this world for the support and information he provided. We are proud to know that he demonstrated a robust analytical reasoning power and excelled in relevant research. We are proud to know that he did not take down and become weary of well-doing. John Lamont, our dear cousin, we decided and we desire to start anew. We are grateful for the 6.5 years of reconnecting. After hurricanes, surgeries, and the pandemic, our collective desire was to meet in Orlando, Florida, where our coming together began many years ago. You were going to introduce us to family members wanting to meet Maggie's children. Due to a circumstance beyond our control, this is something that we did not accomplish. The important the important reflections that we receive from your obituary are that we must learn to live life by being ourselves and to live life freely with no regrets, and that we must plan better between life unpleasantries. It is with sadness that we say farewell to you. You will forever be in our hearts. Larry, Lavetta, Daryl, Robin, Anthony, and Kim, Dr. Bateman, and committee, we thank you for allowing our contribution to this memorial service.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. You mentioned the virus. If it weren't for the virus, we might be here together in Atlanta, but well, anyway, thank you. Thank you so much. Big virtual hugs to you. Roger is here. You'll get to speak to him again soon. Thank you so much for sharing. Next, we have some words sent in by John Pointer. John Pointer was someone who worked with John at Claremont College. In memory of John L. Peterson, sometime in the 1970s, John Peterson came to the psych department at Claremont McKenna College, one of the cluster of colleges in Claremont, California, about a 2-hour drive east of Los Angeles. I invited him to dinner at our place, a condo of 5 rooms, all rooms surrounded a sizable atrium where one could serve a meal, grow plants, etc. From then on, he was a frequent guest at our table, and we became fast friends. The best story about John's early friendship with us comes from one of his birthday parties when our mutual many friends came to our place to celebrate. At that time, the famous pianist and man of color, Andre Watts, was attracting national attention, and we gave him an LP featuring Watts. He was sitting on the sofa between a couple of other friends when he unwrapped the gift. When delighted, the John we knew would be exuberant with loads of physical affect. And when John saw the LP, he whooped with joy, lifted the LP high over his head and behind, hitting a table lamp sitting behind the sofa and knocking it on the floor and breaking it. John did not know he had broken the lamp. My partner hated that lamp. I was not thrilled by it either. There were 2 positive outcomes. John was delighted and our lamp problem was solved. That's from John Pointer of Claremont College. He's 92 years old and couldn't join us live today. But when I read this, when he talked about the exuberant John with the physical affect, I had to laugh and cry a little bit because when excited, whew, he would just go, oh. But we thank John for those words. They're really, really great. Really great. Next, we'll hear from Susan Kegels from CAPS and UCSF. Susan, are you there?
I am here. Thank you, Duncan. And I look forward to meeting you in person sometime. That's a great story about breaking the lamp. So, remembering John. John and I were long-term friends, colleagues, and he was my teacher. When we saw each other only 3 weeks before he died, we reminisced about our friendship, our work together, and how we came to be who we were. It was a long and lovely evening together. I didn't get home until 1 a.m. And we realized then that we'd known each other for nearly 40 years. I met John through Lupin Laughlin, his partner, who was a friend of my brother's before I got into work in AIDS. Lupin was a neonatal intensive care nurse and an LGBT political activist along with my brother. They gave me a gift of an adorable sweater after my first child's birth, which I've kept. John would describe Lupin as his one great love in life. Tragically, Lupin died of AIDS. We reminisced about his time at CAPS, the Center for AIDS Prevention Studies at the University of California, San Francisco, where he conducted extraordinary cutting-edge work on an HIV prevention intervention for Black gay men with his beloved research associate, Lee Middleton. After Lupin's death, John moved on to Atlanta and Georgia State. One of the major reasons he left was to be closer to his beloved mother and father who lived in Orlando. John was their only son. He and I continued talking with each other for years after we were no longer colleagues at CAPS, with him often expressing his wish that more intervention research was being conducted for Black gay men, especially young men, and especially being conducted by Black gay men. I held back, feeling like, who was I to do such work, a white heterosexual woman? But I was doing a lot of intervention for all young gay men, except I kept noticing that no young Black gay men were being reached. In hindsight, I go, duh, and understand why. But John's concerns about lack of interventions got under my skin. Finally, I decided that it was immoral for me to just stand by and watch as the numbers got worse and worse. So I called John with his considerable expertise and knowledge of the issues and asked if he would join my team to figure out a community level intervention for young Black gay men. And I was delighted when he agreed. We worked together over the past 15 years or so, and we became closer friends. John was a very caring friend. He consoled me when my husband died last year. He always wanted to know how my children were doing and kept track of what was happening with them. He talked at length with my daughter about her educational and career decisions. I loved how John emoted, just like we were talking about, his enthusiasm. He laughed heartily. I confess I loved getting him to laugh. And when I told him that Jeff, my husband, had died, he let loose with a no, 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 no. I listened to that and thought, now that's the way I should have responded, but I held myself back. He told me that he was very happy that I had done my work to learn deeply about Black America and Black Americans, recognizing that I really could not do meaningful work with Black folks without this. He observed with pleasure that I had developed a deep appreciation for Black people, Black culture, as though there's only one, Black history, music, churches, politics. And he noted to me that not a lot of white folks working on Black issues do that. To be recognized by John for doing that made me extremely proud. We conducted our research in a different area of the South, away from Atlanta, and he was often quite surprised at how unempowered so many young men were there. It made me wonder how John became the very empowered man that he was. He felt great pride in who he was, as he should have. He felt confident in what he did. He told me about his education and how he had never felt anxious about if he was good enough or smart enough. He went to college at Florida A&M, one of the top HBCUs in the country, which he felt was very important to attend as a young Black man. He went to a summer program at Harvard, and he got his doctorate in social psychology at the University of Michigan, the #1 program in the country. So how did he get that way? A proud, confident Black man from Florida, which is often quite racist? Certainly going to an HBCU helped him, but he also talked of being from an empowered and proud Black community of Orlando. And he shared with me some history books about the Black community of Orlando, and that his parents were proud Black people themselves. They raised him to believe in himself and know that he could do anything he put his mind to doing. And he knew that they deeply loved and accepted him, including when he came out to them as gay. And of course, he was so intelligent, and that always helps. I think the visual image of John that I will always hold will be his emerging from the elevator at the hotel we would stay at in this other place in the South, always looking totally put together with everything color coordinated and beautifully pressed, never a wrinkle or unpolished shoes. He was always immaculate and cut a striking image with his long, lean body. The last time I saw him, I thought how distinguished he looked with his graying hair. At our last visit, which was so full of love and caring, we discussed that he was retired now. Although he still kept up with all the research in the field, that's what he did with great pleasure during COVID. And we discussed that I was semi-retired now and have family in Atlanta. So we talked about being able to spend much more time together now that I'd be making more frequent visits to Atlanta. Sadly, that was not to be. I miss my friend. I hope that John is up there in heaven, if there is such a place, with his beloved mother and father and Lupin. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. We hope to get to meet you too. We do. From Georgia State, the next two speakers are Lindsay Cohen and Dominic Parrott. Lindsay, Dominic, oops, when you're ready.
Hi, this is Lindsay Cohen. Can y'all hear me? Hi, this is Lindsay Cohen. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm the chair of psychology at Georgia State.
I'm the chair of psychology at Georgia State.
It's an honor to have known John as a professional colleague.
Hang on one second. Do you also have your phone logged in too?
Yeah, my wife is sitting next to me listening.
If you could ask her to either plug an earbud in or step away a little bit.
Is that better?
Yes.
Awesome. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start. I'm the chair of psychology at Georgia State, and it's an honor to have known John as a professional colleague. And honestly, it was more of a privilege to have been able to call him as a friend. GSU, Georgia State, was fortunate that John was on faculty for nearly 30 years. But beyond the nearly $20 million in research grant that John and his collaborators secured, and beyond the hundreds of publications and presentations, his research in understanding and preventing HIV, specifically targeting racial and sexual minority populations, truly made a difference to individuals and the larger society. John was a pioneer. Oh, can you not hear me?
Would you hold on 1 second?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm getting other conversations. I'm not sure if someone's mic is on or if it's where you are. I'm not sure. Everyone, would you please mute your microphone? David, can you ask?
I think you can mute them.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're just gonna have to mute them. If we can figure out whose mic is still on.
What about now? Is it still the same?
That's better. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Sorry, a graduate student of mine is getting married in Napa, and we're in between events right now. So I'm not back at Georgia State with the good Wi-Fi, doing the best I can. So it could be my Wi-Fi.
Understand.
Here at Kendall Jackson Winery, which I know John would very much have appreciated. So I'll just start from the top, if that's okay. It was really an honor to have John as a professional colleague. And like I was saying before, it's more of a privilege, more of an honor to have called him a friend. Georgia State was lucky to have him for nearly 30 years, and the benefit was more than, I mean, John and his colleagues brought in $20 million in research grants. They had hundreds of publications and presentations, but his research in understanding preventing HIV, specifically for targeting racial and sexual minority populations, truly made a difference to individuals in society. He was a pioneer in the field of health disparities, and his paradigm shifting 1988 paper announced to the world that ethnic minority men, especially Blacks and Hispanics, made up a significant proportion of all AIDS cases. The significance of his work was recognized by the International AIDS Conference in DC, an invitation to the White House in 2012, countless requests to serve on the top leading national and international committees addressing health in the LGBTQ community. And I can say without hyperbole that his work saved lives, and his legacy in health disparities lives on through many collaborators and mentees. He was a true scholar to admire. However, when I think of John, I really immediately think of his quirky, his positive, thoughtful, passionate, and generous personality. I've never known anyone who could mix a lighthearted spirit with deep-rooted convictions like John. Whether we were talking about frustrations, his frustrations that Roger Bateman's road was not paved, John explained to me in detail. It was not just the dust, mud, rocks bouncing against his car. It was more than his deep-seated perspective that gravel roads should not exist in the Atlanta city limits. It was that the pebbles getting his tire treads, and as he said, they just should not be there. And it was more than him talking about where my son should go to college. John was adamant it should be Swarthmore, period, end of conversation. My son didn't go there, but John felt he should have. Whether it was John talking about opera, symphony, fine arts. I remember John taking my wife to flamenco dancing and saying how it was critical that they went to this. I bowed out of that one. But on all of these fronts, whatever the topic, John could speak eloquently with equal parts fire and laughter. The mixture was just wild. The same balance of determination and carefree excitement was clear when he played racquetball for the first time. We had a group who played fairly competitive racquetball. He had never played, but he joined us. And I just have this image of him. He had these oversized goggles, and he had a sweatband on his head that was somehow sparkling new, but straight from the 1970s. And you can picture John, his tall frame, crouched and focused, waiting for the racquetball. And as he swung and missed the ball, he would just break into a deep laughter. And it's just an image I love to think about. When I think of John, I'm both tearful and miss him dearly, but I'm also amused. He was just such a wonderful, live life to the fullest type of person. And I'm just mixed with various emotions. I would do anything if I could have John come knocking on my office door, look in like he used to do, and just look in my office, look around at my cluttered space and say, oh, no, Lindsay, I could never get anything done in your office. Anyway, thank you for letting me speak. I'll pass the microphone over to Dominic Peratt.
Excuse me. Thank you, Lindsay. Kenneth, can you hear me okay? Great. When I joined the faculty here at Georgia State in 2005, and John's impact on me, I actually felt before I started my job. When I interviewed here at Georgia State, I was meeting with Roger Bateman, and what was proceeding is a very common reserved room. And I suddenly felt an urgency and importance in how I answered various questions. And it wasn't an urgency because I wanted the job, but it was for our shared areas of scholarship. In that meeting, we were discussing research on anti-gay hate crimes. And after John shared a number of his views and ideas on the subject, he ultimately said, So will you study the perpetrators of these acts? And he kind of had his chin up and he was kind of looking at me, and I responded, well, of course, Dr. Peterson, that's what I do. That's my research. I think he said something to the effect of, well, then you got the job. And I'm pretty sure John didn't have the authority to give me the job. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't believe him when he said it. And that was the beginning of the most formative professional relationship that I think I've had, as a young junior scholar and someone new to what it meant to be a faculty member. John was a consistent reminder of how we should carry ourselves. He was vocal, passionate. Never once did I see him compromise his values or his beliefs for fear of what others might think. And his impact on me fundamentally changed the way I thought about my research. And I don't want to bore folks with the minutia of our conversations about science, but I'll say this. John was ridiculously smart, was meticulous about scientific methods, as he was about keeping his office spotless. He was passionate about doing the right research for the right reasons. To my understanding, his favorite quote was by Goethe, and it was taped on the outside of his office door. And it read, "Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do." John lived that value, and it was infectious. It changed the way that I approached my work. And I'm proud that today, when I walk past the office that John used to occupy, that quote is still on that door. And I think Tricia King, who's in that office now, has kept it there. At a personal level, I can't really measure or do justice to John's impact. When I was promoted and received tenure, he organized a dinner for my wife and I at Babette's, which was a mutually favorite restaurant of ours. When my wife and I adopted our twin boys, he was among the first to visit. When I was home alone with 3 small children and their daycare was closed, he asked to come over and I said, "What are their favorite snacks? I'll bring them something to eat in a Netflix movie." And he helped occupy their time and give me a little bit of a breather and an adult to talk to. John would always surprise me with little gifts. And one of the last gifts he gave me was a book, and it's called A World Without Time. And it captures the 15-year friendship between Albert Einstein and Kurt Gödel, who is a lesser known scholar, but made an arguably comparable impact in the fields of logic and mathematics. He gave it to me in recognition of our relationship as collaborative colleagues, and I'll forever cherish it. I've been at Georgia State for 16 years, and I can attest to the fact that my experience with John is not unique. Many of our colleagues could be speaking with you today as I am right now and sharing similar experiences of how John touched their lives. His work, his approach, his collegiality, his values continue to make an impact in our department and on us personally. And I feel safe saying that we will miss him. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Lindsay. When Roger speaks later, I don't know if he'll mention our street that used to be unpaved that drove John insane. And I'll never forget the first time he showed up and we didn't see his car. And we thought, "Where's your car?" "Oh, I parked it up at the top of the hill because I didn't want to get my car dirty coming down here to see you." He was very, 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 very serious about that. Very, very. But we all appreciated, like he said, his quirks, his personality, and he was John. He was himself all the time, no matter where he was. Now we'll have an interlude from his favorite opera singer, Leontine Price. Ready? Okay. Robin Lynn Miller from Michigan State University will share with us next. Robin, are you there?
Yes, I am. It's an honor to remember John today in the company of his family and friends. I entered the field of community psychology in 1986. I chose the field because I thought it would provide me with the theory and tools to do the work of addressing the impact of the HIV epidemic on gay and bisexual men and attacking the homophobic stigma and discrimination that drives vulnerability to HIV. In the 1980s, if you had interests like mine, selecting a graduate program in community psychology meant that you were going to have to chart your own course. Few in community psychology wrote about or focused on gay and bisexual men and the HIV epidemic. As Stephen Hopful later wrote in an essay reflecting on that period, in the 1980s and early 1990s, community psychology was peculiarly disinterested in gay men and HIV, declining to feature panels and presentations on the intersection of these topics at its biennial conferences. John was among the earliest community psychologists, along with the late Bob Hayes, to break through the silence and neglect. Indeed, to the best of my knowledge, John was the first to write an article on Black gay men and HIV in our flagship journal. He was blazing a bright trail. Throughout graduate school, I was the lead investigator, the lead internal evaluator at the Gay Men's Health Crisis in New York City. I loved working at GMHC. I felt my GMHC colleagues embraced me and my work in a way I seldom experienced elsewhere. I had no thought or interest in academia. So when I left GMHC to become faculty in the University of Illinois Psychology Department, it was a surprise even to me. The contrast between GMHC and academia were dizzying. Being the only Black faculty member in UIC's psychology department was terribly isolating. Luckily for me, I entered the academy at the same time John joined Georgia State's community psychology faculty. He was collaborating with Joe Stokes on a series of studies on Black, gay, and bisexual men, and they invited me to join them. Through that collaboration, John became an early champion of my work and career, paving the way for some of my first publications as a professor, including a controversial study on male sex workers published in the American Journal of Community Psychology under his editorship. He was for many years the only Black faculty member with whom I could freely discuss the challenges of working in a setting where you could never be certain of your safety or worth or that of your students. He provided me an unwavering source of social support. In those early years of my learning to be a professor, John played a special role in teaching me how to stand up for the work that I had done, something I had no trouble doing in a non-academic setting, but felt completely unentitled to do within one. John understood that women and people of color cannot survive the academy whole if they permit others' assessments of their value and contributions to overwhelm them. He reminded me time and time again that I did not require anyone's approval to do the work that I wanted to do, or their permission to do it the way I chose. I belonged precisely where I was. My job, like his, was to take up that space, not yield it. John and I worked together for many years on the City Project, an intensely frustrating multi-site cooperative agreement whose moments of reward and joy came principally in the community we created in our Atlanta-Chicago team and the interactions that we had with the young Black gay men in our respective cities. What an incredible team it was. Duncan Teague, the late Byron Mason, Byron Stewart, Bianca Wilson, to name but a few of the many people who made those years valuable. John was a fierce advocate on behalf of the Black gay male communities that were part of that study. He and Joe Stokes went toe-to-toe routinely with the CDC staff, arguing that it was simply unethical in that day and age to try to run a trial in which any Black community of gay and bisexual men were randomly assigned to a condition in which they would receive absolutely nothing except the privilege of having information collected from them. John did everything in his power to ensure that the City Project was conducted in the community's interest. He never stood down from what he knew was the right thing to do. Watching him push and succeed in improving the terms on which that trial was performed was an object lesson in moral integrity. In every one of those battles, John was seeking to create a science that was responsible to and honored Black gay men. I will always treasure the memories of the many times I folded myself into the back seat of John's pristine car as Joe, he, and I headed off to enjoy another of Atlanta's best restaurants. Our spirited conversations over those dinners, and the long post-dinner process of Joe and I helping him to find where he had parked the car, the sole talent John seemed to lack. I am forever grateful for his support of me personally and professionally over decades, his gentle insistence that what I thought and what I might do in the world mattered, just as he understood this about himself. There is an old adage that the bottom of the hill is easier to find than the top. I will always remember John for his uncanny sense of which was the way uphill.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robin. David Malbranch, formerly of Morehouse School of Medicine, of Emory School of Medicine, will share his thoughts. David?
Thank you, Kenneth. And I want to thank everybody here and allowing me a chance to speak. I'm a crier, so just forgive me if I kind of burst down, but I'm going to go ahead with it. The year was 1998. I was a second-year internal medicine resident in New York City at the New York Hospital on 68th in York. I was starting to formulate my clinical and career interests. I knew I wanted to do work around HIV, and I knew I wanted it to focus on other Black gay men like myself. As I was pulling articles from the internet in our library, whenever I came across research articles addressing dynamics among HIV and Black gay men, there was always one name on the author list: John Lamont Peterson. Being the bold person I was, I took the advice of a fellow resident and figured the best way to start doing work in the field was to call Dr. Peterson on the office phone number listed on all his articles. One day I called during normal business hours and a professional sounding voice answered. "Hello, this is Dr. Peterson," he said. "Hi, my name is David Malbranch. I'm an internal medicine resident in New York and was interested in doing work with Black gay men and HIV, and I saw your name on what articles I could find. I just thought I'd reach out for any guidance you could give me." There was silence on the other end of the phone. "Dr. Peterson?" I asked. Then he spoke. "How did you get this number?" he asked, politely but with a firm tone that let me know I wasn't using the proper etiquette in how I was approaching him. "It was on all the articles you published," I told him. And that was how our relationship started. John referred me to connect with Bob Fullalove at the Mailman School of Public Health, since I was about to start a program over there that involved getting a master's in public health. Then he told me that if and when I planned to come to Atlanta, to look him up. So when I joined Emory's Division of General Medicine as a faculty member in 2001, that's exactly what I did. And he took me on as his mentee 20 years ago. What was great about having John as a mentor is that he wasn't a medical person. In fact, we were both very different. I preferred qualitative research. He preferred quantitative. He didn't drink alcohol, I did. He was refined and succinct. I was, and still am, a hothead who can pop off on the mouth at someone at a moment's notice. As rough around the edges as I was, he still committed to mentor me, while also taking on Greg Millett at the same time. Basically, he adopted both of us as a couple of strays who would become his nephews. I didn't realize what an honor and privilege it was until much later to be his mentee. John Lamont Peterson didn't just mentor anyone. It's hard to put into words exactly how much John has meant to me professionally and personally over the past 2 decades. He helped me with letters of recommendation to get into the CAPS Visiting Professor Program, NIH loan repayment grants, and so many other professional opportunities. He taught me how to refine my scientific writing, given my natural narrative style. He advised me on how to handle the ignorance and craziness of reviewer number 2 after they tore up each and every one of my manuscript submissions. He taught me how to write a grant that could actually be funded, and he made himself available for my professional questions whenever I needed him, no questions asked. More than all that, John showed me what it meant to be a true mentor and demonstrated by example what it meant for Black gay men to truly support other Black gay men. He also taught me that the roles of mentor and friend were not stuck in rigid categories, but instead fluid and evolving. Mentorship stretched beyond professional boundaries. It embraced and nurtured chosen familial relationships, a dynamic common in our communities when biologic family isn't there for us. We celebrated each other's birthdays along with Greg Millett and Philip Ricks. We went to see movies together, and we spoke on the phone, not as frequently as either of us would have liked, but when it did, it was a long and rich discussion, qualitative, just how I liked it. The last time I saw John was to celebrate his 70th birthday in June of 2019. Everyone knows his birthday was April 22nd, but we got together when we could. We went to Papa Do's in Marietta, and we had a good meal. I had the server take a picture of us, which was something I didn't often do for our birthday celebrations, and I decided to post the picture on Facebook after I had asked him if that was okay, of course, and included a caption celebrating John and trying to educate younger Black gay men doing HIV work today to understand on whose shoulders they were standing. The response to this post was overwhelming. He had close to 700 likes and almost 150 people from all over the country wishing him a happy birthday, remarking how amazing he looked for his age. But most of the comments were from people who knew him, worked with him, or were inspired by him. John didn't do social media like many of you know, but I felt he needed to understand just how far his ripples went. So we made a plan to get together for dinner one evening, ordered takeout, and I pulled up my Facebook account to show him that post. He sat there for a good hour or so in front of my computer, reading through all the comments, laughing, hollering in delight, calling out people's names he hadn't heard or seen from in a long time. Consistent with his meticulous nature, he didn't stop until he read and remarked on every single comment. I honestly believe that in his profound humility, he never truly realized exactly how many lives he had touched. I think that was the last time I saw John before life happened. My father passed in January 2020. I had to move to New York for some time, and then COVID emerged. When I returned to Atlanta, we were planning to celebrate our birthdays together a few weeks after he got the COVID vaccine when I got news of his passing. John, you were our Marlon Riggs, our Bayard Rustin, our Bill T. Jones, our James Baldwin, our Essex Hemphill. You were a true trailblazer and a giant among giants. I miss your laugh, your hugs, your legendary shade, and your radiant spirit. I will forever be thankful to you for choosing me to be a part of your family and legacy. And I promise to continue striving to make you proud. Rest in power, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, David. You held up well, but now you're getting all of us here in the room. Thank you. Thank you very much. Greg Millett, are you there? Are you ready?
Hi, Kenneth. Yeah, I'm here and tearing up like everybody else. It's so wonderful to see everybody online today. You know, God broke the mold when he made John Peterson. He was idiosyncratic to a fault, always immaculately dressed, never saw John in a t-shirt, sweats, or sneakers. He was always on time. Everything had its place, from his tidy home to his barely touched car to his perfectly arranged office. And accordingly, there was no such thing as CP time with John. He was always on point. I learned this the hard way after waiting too long to contact John after I moved to Atlanta while I was working on the city project. I had long admired him and his contributions to science and had an opportunity to interact with John from afar when he was one of the 4 principal investigators on that project. My grad school mentors in North Carolina kept telling me about John and how much I was on the same trajectory to be another renowned Black gay researcher, just like him. Well, I moved to Atlanta and I did not contact John. But who could blame me? I was intimidated by John's intellect, publication in NIH research funding records, as well as his no-nonsense delivery in professional settings. As fate would have it, I ran into John at Lenox Mall nearly 8 months after moving to Atlanta. And like a fool, I had not foreseen or prepared for that moment ahead of time. It didn't go well for me. He waved away any pleasantries or greetings and said icily, "I gave you my number, use it." And then he stared at me silently for emphasis for what seemed like eons while telepathically conveying, "Dummy." I called John the next day, and it was the beginning of a 23-year friendship. To this day, I'm convinced that there are people who worked with John every day or were even fairly good friends with him who do not have his home phone number. John was an incredible teacher and mentor. When I was a young scientist, John took me under his wing. He fought for me to be first author on a manuscript, a literature review that ended up being a career-defining, launching manuscript for me when it was published. I nearly gave up on writing it, a process that took 18 months because of the sheer number of articles and information to process. And when I wasn't moving quickly enough, John said, "Don't make me regret giving you first authorship on this paper." That was all I needed to finish that paper. And when the paper nearly did not make it through CDC internal review, John called my branch chief and gave him so much hell that my boss visited my office at CDC and said that the manuscript was approved and sent forward. And then he added that he never wanted to have a conversation like that again with Dr. John Peterson. John guided me through many firsts as a scientist for things that very few Black or white academics, for that matter, achieve, from publications in JAIDS, AIDS, to JAMA, and The Lancet. He taught me how to properly read a manuscript. Abstract first, method second, then you go right to the tables and then the results. The discussion was superfluous. And after reviewing manuscripts together, he would either tank it by saying, "That dog don't hunt." Or if the article was good, you'd hear John say, "Baby, they poured the tea." He taught me how to handle negative peer reviews with a salty kindness that only a real Southerner could muster. When people didn't understand my publications, he'd liken it to throwing pearls before swine. John just had a way with words and a flourish with all these different types of quotes and quotations. John and I were like peas in a pod. We both knew the scientific literature on HIV and Black gay men who have sex with men like the backs of our hands, and we could cite the author, publication date, journal, and research results for nearly any publication over a 20-year period. And even when I became an established scientist, my manuscripts would be returned from John with pages upon pages of red ink. John was as good a friend as he was a mentor. We joked endlessly about his seemingly effortless svelte build and a perfect health, and while the rest of us had to work hard at it. John would tease me for getting up at 5 a.m. to run or to go to the gym, and make fun of my exercise routines from running on the beach, jumping rope, or going to SoulCycle. Experiencing tragedy in his life at a young age, he was also the perfect confidant and comforter when my world was upside down. From an emotionally jarring breakup with a boyfriend to the death of my mother, I could call on John anytime and he would pick up the phone and listen to me vent, cry, or both, while offering reassurance that things will get better. He always thought hard about perfect gifts for the people close to him. And when my husband and I got married, John sent us 24-karat gold-plated cutlery from Florence, Italy. Completely unexpected and different from anything you would ever receive from anyone else, but so John Peterson. Despite his achievements, he remained humble. For years, I would invite John to the White House to meet President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama, and John always demurred. I finally got him to come to the White House in 2012. He admired the Obamas, but he was always secure enough in himself and his accomplishments that being in the White House or meeting the president wasn't a big enough deal to lure him away from his townhome and the idyllic life that he created for himself in Virginia Highlands. There will never be anyone like John Lamont Peterson, and I'm so grateful that he chose me to be a part of his life. John, wherever you are, I hope that every day is brunch at Babette's with good conversation with good friends. I love you and miss you. Thank you for the many gifts you shared with me, with David, your many friends and admirers, and the world.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, we're gonna do a little position change here. Let Roger come in. Give us a second. You wanna watch that? Okay, here. Oops. Mike? Yep.
Am I on? I'm on.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
I think there's almost no way I could follow David and Greg. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank all of you so much. Everyone else who's here. In 1973, I joined Georgia State University Psychology Department. 10 years later, in 1983, I met John Peterson at a BWMT convention. That was about the time when he was moving from Claremont to the Center for AIDS Prevention Studies at the University of California, San Francisco. We had common interests. For one, we were both academic psychologists, and we became fast friends. Over the next 10 years, I saw John often. He came to Atlanta with Lupin to visit. I saw him at the American Psychology Association's annual conventions and other occasions. And I was very familiar with the work he was doing in San Francisco. And so when in 1993, another 10 years, my department announced a position in the community program, I alerted John immediately. Some people say I recruited John for Georgia State. That's not true. I knew John was right for my department, and I knew my department was right for John. I just let nature take its course. To avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest, I even came late to the faculty meeting when my department voted to offer John the job. I had no doubt as to the outcome. John left us too early, but I like to think there were no regrets. The academy was important to John. Its work, its rituals, its titles. He had met the goals that mattered to him. He was a tenured, full professor with an enviable, solid, and important body of scholarly work. As the AIDS epidemic hit, John was among the first to understand that higher rates among Black men who had sex with men were not due to what they did. Their rates of risky behavior were in fact lower than comparable whites, but it was due to what was not done for them. Health, care, prevention programs. John's work enabled frontline workers like Duncan Teague, Craig Washington, Phil Wilson, Reggie Williams, countless others. Although John's domain was very clearly the ivory tower, it's no exaggeration to say that his work saved lives. John was also an exuberant celebrator of birthdays. And I suspect, like me, many of you have fond memories of birthdays past. John believed that getting together with one or two friends to celebrate his birthday was good. Getting together with another group of friends was even better. And of course, why not a third? I learned we had to get our bid in early to find a date near April 22nd to be included in the birthday lineup. This year we were lucky and got the day of slot. It was the last time Daryl, Kenneth, and I saw John, exuberant as always. John was a loyal friend, a consummate scholar. He left the world better. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you. Microphone.
Good afternoon, friends. If I could just sing opera. And not in baritone, but in mezzo soprano. If only. I'm opening my brief remarks because Roger is sitting here in my home. with scripture, and I'm going to make it quick for the academics who will probably just fall over if I go too long in the scripture. But in the 23rd Psalm, some of you were required to memorize this a long time ago. A poet said that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Through the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. It's insane to think that any of us, talk about John Peterson in 5 minutes when I couldn't even say hello to him in 5 minutes when he would call. But we'll do our best. I'm honoring the power that brought us together at this time by whatever name you call God, or don't call him, or don't call her, or them, they, there. I want to start with humbly being thankful to you for this opportunity to be with you all. There are plenty of challenges and plenty of people in need in our lives, and our life demands keep us so separated. And yet through Zoom this afternoon, we're brought together even in our grief and our love. And I'm grateful. To the family of John Lamont Peterson and his intimate friends, it is an honor to be asked to say something about our accomplished and esteemed friend and your relative. I extend my sincere condolences to all of you, and my prayer has been that this service is healing. Because if there was ever a moment in history when we need healing, it is right now. Thank you for coming. I'm Duncan Teague. I'm the minister at Abundant Love Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta. And I haven't always been. And I'm going to ask Gavin Morrow Hall and Phil Wilson to mute their computers and just smile. While I was working in a position that changed my career path, not too long ago, we remembered Reggie Williams, and Reggie changed my life, but my career path was headed down the community track of HIV and AIDS folks. But John Peterson needed a research assistant when he chose to come to Atlanta and be at Georgia State University. And somebody needed to be a buffer between John Lamont Peterson and Georgia State University, and you're looking at it. I accepted while I was doing that job, and Robin Miller and Joe Stokes, it's so good to see you, because I was introduced also to this other thing called qualitative research. And I'm like, really? And John was like, no, not really. But anyway, I learned that I was really not called to research. So I'm not like David Milbranch and Greg Millett. I was called into ministry and I was avoiding it. And I think John knew it because he supported me in my ministry while I was doing research with him. And he supported the growth in liberal religious ministry and this bizarre notion that I was going to start a liberal religious community in the African-American community in the West End of Atlanta. And I got to know something else about John Lamont Peterson and his spirituality. And I almost became his minister, but nobody deserved that honor. So I got close as anybody else could ever get. And I am proud of it. And I can say that Abundant Love was a place that John Peterson supported, and I mean with cash. And you know, Peterson did not spend his money anywhere. You had to have it together. And so I am proud to say that he supported us. And he supported my ministry. And he was there when we started. And he even told me if anybody decided they didn't want me as their minister to call him. I am so grateful I never had to make that call. He supported my relationship with my longtime partner and who I am grateful for the many roles we play in each other's lives. He is head of our tech team today. So if y'all can put amen in the chat and thank David for that. And John was at my wedding. And he supported me when I chose to go to graduate school in a way that only John Peterson can support you when you say you're going to school. And he also was consistent because he was right there for my ordination. You've heard of his accomplishments and his public persona, and I'd like you to know that he was a devoted person spiritually and personally to his family who has been speaking about it, but he told us not enough for us to intrude, never, but enough for us to know how much he loved you and how much he loved his parents and that he wanted the best for especially those people that he loved and for the people he was doing his lifelong research for. They influenced some of his most important decisions. He also expected the best of us. Now, none of us could ever have our offices like his. I gave up on trying. But he expected us to try. Three lessons, and then I'll let you go, from John. No homework involved. May we each be committed to the betterment of a community stricken with an illness or in need of our intelligence and our care. May we love those who have helped form us into who we are today and have an undying love and devotion for those folks like John Peterson. So if there's somebody in your life who helped you get to where you are sitting today, call them today, because you don't know when you're going to get that phone call like we all got. We expected John to be here until he surpassed his parents' age into their late 80s and 90s. Make that phone call today and thank somebody who helped you get there. And may we also live with the faith that love is so powerful that not even the valley of the shadow of death. The poet was so brilliant all those thousands of years ago to say that it is a shadow It feels devastating, but it's a shadow compared to the light of life and love. And it cannot separate us from the love that will bring us together and lift us up. Thank you, John, for the opportunities that have come our way because you were John Peterson during our lives. Amen.
Charles is up next.
I am supposed to tell Charles, and I hope you're ready, Charles, that you're next.
I'll never be ready to say farewell to John Peterson, but I delight in the opportunity to remember him. Can everyone hear me? Okay. I thought that I would end up having to be the person who summarized all the different parts of John's life. And in fact, Roger and Daryl and Kenneth have done such a wonderful job that all of you have attested to the various lives he participated in, his career, his journey, his from his family to his academic career to his spirituality. You've all attested to that. And most of all, his professional life. In the 40 years I knew John, I was just his friend. I wasn't his colleague professionally. I wasn't a spiritual journeyman with him. I was his friend. And I can't think of anything that it could be a greater blessing in life than that. You made mention earlier about members of our pantheon, the African-American pantheon, great men like Bayard Rustin and the Black documentary filmmaker Marlon Riggs. On a day in Saturday in July of 1985, John and I spent an evening with both Bayard Rustin and Marlon Riggs here in Los Angeles. And that was just one of the many journeys that we had. But that was a night when he was with some of the great men of our culture who've contributed so much because he belonged there. John and I met 40 years ago this year here in Los Angeles. He was at Claremont College as a professor, and one night friends of his there brought him to a rap session at Black and White Men Together here in Los Angeles. And I had just stepped down as its first national co-chair. And John and I bonded in a rap group that was so intense that it did two things. One, it cemented our friendship immediately. And two, it made us decide, you know what? We're too much for this group. We gotta find another group just to have really, really intense discussions that won't scare people. And so we very quickly founded Salon Noir, our own Black chamber, to discuss with other Black gay men intellectual issues with no holds barred. Because what John was passionate about, his realm was academic research, psychology. Mine was politics. But what we shared was a commitment to improvement in the lives of African Americans in this country and as gay men, and living our lives out of the closet proudly and contributing to that. And what was amazing about John was that John, people have talked about his humor and people have talked about his academic dedication, but they weren't contradictions in him. They joined in him. They enhanced one another. They complemented one another. John lived for passionate objectivity. He was about being excited about the world and data and information and patterns and connecting dots. And that was what his journey was about. What makes the human mind function? What makes it work? What are the things that contribute to it? And how do we improve those connections so that we can live better lives? And that's what John was all about. Passionate objectivity, not merely data, not merely research, but caring about the research, caring about how it was used, how it could contribute to people's real lives. I would oftentimes think that John was naive because I'm sure you've all seen this side of John, almost like a kid, he'd be surprised at some aspect of reality that he was incredulous about, he had never heard of. But that was because John he never willingly accepted the divide between that which is and that which ought to be. He was about how do we get to where we ought to be as a people, as a nation, as human beings, as caring individuals. And that's what he was about. How do we find the information that will build a path to being healthier human beings? And that was what everything was about for John. It is amazing to me that in our lives together, we talked almost every day for 40 years. I was in Los Angeles, I was in Oakland, I was in Washington, D.C., he was in Berkeley, he was in Los Angeles, he was in Atlanta, but we talked almost every day. We had our own little language, and whether it was relationships or whether it was public policy, John wanted always to understand how the human psyche worked. Most recently, on his last day on this planet, May 23rd, I have phone messages from John, one of which recorded a conversation we had in which he expressed caring about the fact that I'd successfully found, with his help, guidance, and pushing, a board and care for my mom who was suffering from dementia and with whom he had a close bond. Later on that night, he sent me a copy of a letter that an article that he had sent my dad, because he and my dad had a passionate intellectual discussion about polyamory, which I didn't understand and didn't know anything about, but that was Dad and John. And they continued that discussion on the last day of his life. And another email I had was from him to my born-again Christian Trump-loving brother here in Los Angeles, who he also had a passionate friendship with, because that brother and he engaged in their own exegesis around religious life, spirituality, Christianity, because John so loved his parents that the thought of not ever being with them again in eternity was unacceptable to him. And also his commitment to objectivity and to logic made the Christian story difficult for him. So he struggled to believe and to be loyal to his commitment to reality. Objective research with passion, with a belief that it isn't an end in and of itself. He delighted in intellect for its own sake, but he really, really was committed to knowing about what human beings were about and what we could do and how we could maximize our gifts, because that would make us a better people. That would make all of us better human beings. John is the only person I ever knew that when people said, "Man, you live in an ivory tower," which normally is meant as an insult, John was delighted. Absolutely. He earned his PhD at 26, and he never wanted and rarely ever did work outside of academia from that moment. He wanted to enlarge the wealth and knowledge of the world, and he did. You've all attested to it. We've all seen it. We've all benefited from it in so many endeavors, whether it was studying the African-American family, studying the Black gay male experience, and most recently, he was increasingly engaged in the exploration of evolutionary psychology. These are the things that he lived for. These are the things that he wanted to contribute to all of our lives. And I am proud to say that for 40 years, this man was my closest and best friend, and I his. There were no words left unsaid. So I'll end only with words that John himself loved to say. Duncan will recognize. Man, he's finished. He's gone to glory. John used to say that about people whom he admired, who left. So, John, I know that you are with your parents and with your beloved Lupin, gone to glory.
Hang on, David. Thank you, Charles, so much. We appreciate it. I can't imagine how hard that was, but thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. This is not what we envisioned a few months ago when we thought we would do this, but it's 2020 or 21 or whatever year it is, and COVID. Anyway, after hearing all these wonderful memories, the stories about John's accomplishments, his life, his love, his quirkiness, his everything, I have to tell y'all, I ironed this shirt today because John would want it that way. I haven't ironed in ages. I ironed this shirt today. I didn't get a haircut. I should have done that. But anyway, John will forgive me for that. I didn't do all of that. But anyway, after all these stories, if we were in person, I know we would have a wonderful time at the repast. That's what we call it at home in New Orleans. We would spend hours and hours talking and eating and laughing and drinking. And I'm sorry that we can't do that in person. It would be a hoot. And John would have loved that. He would have loved that. Laughing and talking and arguing. And where I'm from, there would have been some drinking. I would have been drinking some. Maybe some of y'all would have joined me with that too. But when we celebrate someone, it's one of the things we would do. So thank you so much. I do want to thank, one second.
Kenneth,
Mm-hmm.
we can do that.
Yes, we can.
When we have the opportunity
Yes,
to do it, let's do it.
Yes. Did y'all hear Duncan? He said, when we have the opportunity to do that, we should. One day this will be over, right?
Yes.
One day it will be over. It would be wonderful to do all this in person. It would be wonderful. It really would be. It really would be. I just want to take a moment to thank David and Duncan for letting us use their wonderful Zoom setup. I don't know. We could not have done this on our own. We could not.
This is a wonderful.
Kenneth,
Yes.
quick question. If you're getting ready to close, I don't know if you can open the mic to others and people who have to jump off because of time or whatever can do that, but there may be a few other people that would, like to say make a few heartfelt comments. If you can't do that, I understand.
Okay, we can do this kind of quickly. Like I would tell John when I'd see him at dinner, John, get to the point of the story. We don't have all night. So if you would try to summarize and give us, tell us why you're raising your hand to speak. Tell us that so we can get lots of people will want to share. So let's do the best we can. Okay. David, how do we want to handle this? Do we want to have people? Is there a hand raise icon there, David? Is there a hand raise icon?
I don't know.
At school, there's a hand raise icon with Zoom. I don't know about on this thing.
I can start, because I'm the one who made the suggestion, and then you can tell me to shut the F up if I talk too much.
I have no trouble telling people to stop talking ever. I'm an elementary school teacher, so go ahead.
Okay, this is Stuart Coulter, and I've known John. I knew him for over 40 years. We met in the 1980s, the start of the HIV epidemic. And I was working for the state of California doing STD control work, and I volunteered at the AIDS Project of the East Bay to be one of the only straight speakers who would go out in the community, and there was a lot of homophobia, as we all know. And I would jump on people when they'd make comments and tell them about some of the surgeons that have died of HIV who were gay and the best in the field, on and on. So John, I met him at one of the meetings where I was volunteering and he was working there. And he looked clear through me and we started talking. We immediately hit it off, and kind of an odd couple, but we hung out a lot. And when he saw my wife, I was married at that time to a beautiful Black sister, and I've got 3 beautiful kids with her. Fortunately, they look a lot more like her than me and are smarter too. But we walked away one day to walk around Lake Merritt in Oakland and talk. And John said, man, that sister got some pretty legs. I said, man, don't go there. That's my wife. He just laughed. But he would tell me things about how people were flirting with each other. I learned so much from him. And role model and mentor, as we've heard from many others. And, you know, I moved to Atlanta later to come to CDC, and we reignited our friendship and we hung out. We went to movies together. One group that I felt sorry for when we would go out to eat were waiters in restaurants. Guaranteed he was going to ask 43 questions about the food. There was no, put that on the side plate. And it was beautiful. We'd go to movies. And when he had something to say, he did the Black tradition. He made some noise in the movie. And people just looked and they didn't say anything. But, you know, I can go on and on because he's someone, there was a lot of love between us. And a couple of other very quick comments. I was invited to speak. I was being used as an HIV speaker at Allen Temple Baptist Church. I was speaking at Santa Rita Rehabilitation Facility to the women, and they loved me because they would tease me and have fun, and I rolled with it. But when I was invited to speak at Allen Temple, the leading Black church for who's who in the East Bay area in Oakland, I said no, I wasn't the right person. Had I given the talk, it would have been a good talk. People would have nodded their heads and said, thank you, that white boy did good. You know, in the parking lot, I would have been in my car in 3 minutes. Instead, I recommended they contact Dr. Peterson. John gave that talk. He told me later it took him 3 hours after that talk to be able to get in his car and be able to drive away and go home. And he said they had 9 million questions, and you know, everything he said was factual. This was early in the epidemic when there was lots of lies and misinformation. And so he came to Atlanta, like I said, and we got, you know, we hooked up again and we would go out often.
Thank you. Stuart,
John
I'm
was
sorry.
never-
hate to cut you off,
Stuart's got to
Stuart.
shut
but-
up. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Stuart. Appreciate it.
Charles,
Appreciate
Charles,
it.
good to see you. Greg Millette. Bye, y'all. I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you. Has anyone indicated they want to speak in the chat, Roger? You know, I can't see the chat. Anyone else? Okay. Can't see.
Gina and Ralph, I think you guys were on.
I'm sorry.
Were on mute.
Ralph and Gina?
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey,
Ralph
Greg.
and Gina.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. It's so good to me. We've heard about you for decades, and it's.
Well, the first thing is don't believe it. No one's that bad. But I am a horrible dresser. That's true.
Amazing.
Well, actually, 2 things. One is I don't like saying goodbye to John. So I'm not going to do that. John will always be in my heart, my thoughts, and in my prayers.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, if there's a Babettes in heaven, we will meet again, and it'll be on me, I have no doubt, for brunch at Babette's. Yeah. It's, what can you say? He's in the chat. I've known John a real long time. Charles has known John, Greg, David, everyone has known John a long time. And it's amazing the strength of those relationships that have carried through the years. That's a testament to who the man was. He introduced me to my wife, Gina. He said, Ralph, you really need to meet her. She's for you. And, you know, in his own subtle way. Yeah, okay. And it worked out. That was great. He was the best man at our wedding. He was also the godfather of our daughter. And a great choice because he is such a caring guy. But if I could share a little story, and you'll relate to this very well, I think. When our daughter was 2, she was crawling around on the floor. She liked John. John liked playing with her, right? He's picking her up and he's playing with her, he's putting her down. And now one thing everyone will agree on, John was an impeccable dresser. Yes, he was natty, right? To the nines. He was always had the look. He was always coordinated. He had the great shoes, if you recall, right? The loafers. Well, He puts our daughter down and he looks over and he says, what did you just do? I said, what do you mean, John? She just whizzed in my shoe. I said, what? And John, I don't believe she just whizzed in my shoe. I said, she's like a 2-year-old girl. What do you want to do? He goes, Ralph, I don't know what to do. So he gets up, right? Holds his shoe in his hand, goes to the kitchen sink, empties it out. And then he starts pouring water into the shoe. I said, John, what are you doing? He goes, I don't know how long these shoes can take urine. So then he goes, Ralph, I gotta go home. I said, well, what do you mean? I gotta see what I can do with my shoes. So the image I have that's indelibly etched is John with his shoe in his hand, hopping across the room because he didn't want to put his foot down. It was all wet in urine. Hopping out the door and down to the car. I will always love the man. Life and death makes no difference. He's loved. He'll always have that love.
Thank you. Thank you, Ralph and Gina. I can't imagine that scene. I can't. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Anyone else?
Hi, this is Maurice Franklin. I've known John Peterson since 1987, 88, when I moved to Atlanta. It was John's work, and as David and Greg and others have said, John is the social scientist hero, original OG hero to the Black gay community. So I want to acknowledge that and say it was some of the early work that John did, and some of it happened in my apartment in Atlanta. Some of those facilitated focus groups and were happening right in my apartment and that contributed to his study. I think that we all were in awe of John's intellect, but we also were just, could feel his passion and how welcoming and how he wasn't a snob about what he knew. He knew what he knew, and we all knew what he knew. He was the one that we could hide behind in those early days of those conferences. It was John Peterson's work and his fierce intellectual fierceness that protected us as we were doing the work in our community. One of my funniest moments is about 20 years ago, we were all in Los Angeles, myself, George Bellinger Jr. at Phil Wilson's house, to work with Phil, who is now deceased, really beginning to do the early focus groups that started and formulated the Black AIDS Institute. And we were sitting around Phil's house one night having great conversation. I'm sure I was probably 2 or 3 martinis in, and John was having his wine, but John got up and began to dance, and it was that high-pitched voice that came up out of his, because he was holding court with us. But as he did that, I was just, John is free, he's among friends, he's safe, we're all safe, we're among friends. We had been talking about recreating that, getting the whole group together at Phil's house. We've been talking about that for the last 3 years. And the last time I talked to him was shortly after I had done dissertation and had been hooded and was well on my way to my first academic research article. And I called him up on the phone to talk to him. And he answered the phone, his home phone, and he said, Dr. Franklin, I could have heard that from anybody else that wouldn't even faze me. But hearing that from my big brother, I just got quiet. I started to cry. And John was, he wasn't that sensitive. He started to talk and, he let me gather and collect myself. And because I was called him to talk about more research and sort of what kind of Black genealogy project can we do for the Black gay community and Black gay HIV community. I felt like we're losing so much of our history. So many people are dying, and we have to do something to begin. And then he started talking about tools that he had already developed for that. And he was so willing to share, everything that he had. And so we had spent a lot of time talking about that. But I'm just so fortunate, to have, had him in my life, and to see, just the kind of influence that he had, and hearing all of these other, great researchers and who are also friends and family on this Zoom talk about John's work and his influence. I will say this, there were times when we had to fight CDC and other researchers, to deal with just this level of imposter syndrome that some of us were feeling in terms of, in some ways, the way they treated John, because he was our hero. And so we had to fight hard for him. And so I want to acknowledge that as well. He did, as much as he fought for us, we fought for him too. CDC wasn't always nice. And so I want to acknowledge that. I want to just thank his family for those acknowledgements of John's work. He's going to be missed. We've lost another one, as my uncle said, the branches on the trees above me, the branches on the tree above me are starting to fall, and I'm feeling it. So I will miss him. I will miss him, but I'll remember his laughter. And I'm so glad to have been able to stay on. I wanted to say what I had to say. We loved him, and we will certainly miss him.
Thank you. Thank you, Maurice. Thank you. We appreciate it. We do. We do. Anyone else? I can't read the chat, so if anybody's chatting. Okay. Okay. Okay.
I think that in deference to time,
Sure.
If one more person would like to share,
Sure.
because y'all are getting hungry. I can feel it.
Anyone else? Anyone else?
I have a question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible, because I keep finding wonderful photos of John. I mean, I've got thousands, but there are a few that are so John that I would like to be able to upload somewhere where others can share in some of those, in some of the pictures of John being John. Is there a way we can do that? How would you want us to do that?
I will defer to some of the younger folks who know about that Dropbox and all that stuff. I'm clueless, but I'm sure there's a way that we can do that. Yeah,
we open up a memorial page for John on Facebook.
We can work on something. We can work on something.
He would be horrified.
Yes, he wouldn't like that idea, but we can
I know he
something.
wouldn't, but you're right.
We'll work on something. When we get in touch with you about how to find this Zoom recording, we'll try to figure out what we can do to make that accessible to everyone. Okay. Anything else? Anything else? Okay. Well, again, thank you for joining us today to celebrate John's life. It's not what we thought, but we did the best we could. It's been moving. We've laughed. We've cried. We've done all kinds of things. Thank you so much. We do need to thank again David and Duncan and Abundant Love for this great Zoom setup. There's no way we could have done this, but we couldn't. And like Duncan said, at some point when things are okay, we should physically get together when it's safe.
And when we're in each other's towns,
Mm-hmm.
don't let the opportunity go by.
Right. That's right. Anything else?
Because I got to find out who that old man was with Gina Weinberg.
Ralph. It's
I know.
Ralph.
Right. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your sharing with us. It's been wonderful. Really has been. Let's close with Leontine.
Well, thank you, everyone. Stay well, please.
Thank you.